Hello, welcome to the contest of the Pantheons, Post-Mortem. Um, Unfortunately, though we have made a previous recording of this, um, it is unavailable to us as of this moment due to technical issues. And since then, some group members have become unavailable due to, sleep and life reasons. So take two, I suppose. Um, I'm Pranshu. I helped with some of the story details that we had planned originally, some of the map design, um, and coded.
I'm Jack. I was the project lead as well as just general assistance in a lot of the coding and testing of the game.
All right. Hello, I am Taylor. I am the artist for this project, and I was in charge of gathering a lot of assets for the game, as well as creating custom player and boss sprites.
Okay,
Um,
and with that, Taylor
Oh,
and
yes.
and Allison, do you want to?
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. And I'm Allison, and in this project, I was in charge of mainly like head up display and kind of coding part.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, and now we'll get into the questions and stuff. Taylor, if you want to take the floor.
Yeah, so to answer the first question, what went right with our process and our game? We were successfully able to create a basic level with AI implementation, some guns, and bosses. And then we were also successfully able to create a variety of custom assets that were used in the final game. And at least to us, the aesthetics of the game are pleasing to the eye and function correctly during gameplay. We also have working enemy AI, and we have created 3 different types of guns for the player to use.
Um, Personally, I am pretty proud of how we were able to come together as a group of students who, before this, I don't think any of us actually knew each other. Uh, and we were able to make a game with a strong art style and one that's fairly well done, in my opinion. We also did a good job, I feel, of creating a unified art style where even though several of the sprites came from online sources, they still mesh well with the sprites that we created ourselves.
So in this project, what we found worked better than we expected is that a decent AI system was developed along with a bullet script and could be customized to create a wide variety of weapons.
For what went wrong and what problems we faced, one of the major problems with our game ideas was that we aimed a little too high initially, and even while planning out afterwards, and flew a little too close to the sun, metaphorically, without considering what we could realistically accomplish given the time frame, and setting a detailed and realistic plan for achieving that goal. Although a schedule was developed, there was no like regular enforcement or check-ins, which would ensure that progress was made at the rate that would be preferred and would match the goals that we had, set at the outset of this whole project. Um, in terms of the final game, we placed a lot more emphasis on what we now consider slightly less important aspects and the more important ones. Instead of getting like the basics implemented and the game to a playable final project stage, a lot of time was spent developing on lore and how things would feel and how certain elements were supposed to be, rather than making sure that all of that was like an actual playable, palpable thing.
Yeah, and for as Yeah, as for how we overcame these problems, as soon as our first check-in was completed, we created an initial grand plan with dates and deadlines for each person's role in the group. This is where we were given distinct responsibilities on what we would accomplish in the project, and the frequency with which we had Discord calls as our form of communication, that increased a lot. So yeah, our communication increased by a lot, allowing us to get a lot more progress done. And in the end, we were able to come together as a group and, pull through as a team. And in the end, we've made a presentable game, and it has been completed by the due date.
For some changes that we had to make along the way, unfortunately, is for balancing the game, we had to nerf our initial gun design mechanics, and we were able to improve the AI from what we had initially, which allowed them to recognize walls and navigate around them in order to reach the player instead of just mindlessly running into them. Our team was also able to solve the problem of the enemy objects clipping into walls that we had occasionally, where due to, I believe, our logic on how we tested if a collision was happening, there were times where objects would just clip right through a wall. And we made other similar small changes.
As for what we learned, out of this, we got that groups with a really large number of participants can sometimes be a lot more difficult to maintain and require a higher level of cohesiveness, especially with established jobs, in order to function as effectively. And when it comes to gaining an understanding of how a game like this is supposed to be developed, we learned a lot about how communication is very key through every step of the way. For our 2-minute pitch, we had established a lot of things, such as how this was originally a top-down dungeon crawl bullet hell style shooter, where the player was supposed to take control of one of the 4 chosen champions, explore through several temples. Along the way, they'd run into a wide array of guns themed after a variety of elements. And the enemy bosses would be the other champions that you had not chosen at player selection. And there were intended to be chests and mechanics like that through which more guns could be unlocked, and there was more maps within which there'd be puzzles and chests for us to find these things. But a lot of that had to get scrapped or reworked along the way because of the problems and solutions mentioned prior. However, I think we did a pretty decent job with what we had.